We are back. We are in my kitchen talking macroeconomics today. We're going to be talking about output and income, one of the most important measures of one of the most important economic measures that economists point to. This gets reported in the news all the time. The question is it important? Does it even work? Let's get into it. Let's talk about it a little bit. Now, your chapter is going to go kind of more in depth into a couple more things. I need you to read the chapter. I will test you on the chapter, but for today and today's quiz, it will just focus on this lesson right here. Now, when we talk about output and income, we are really talking about GDP. You may know this as gross domestic product. If you want a definition of that, this is my definition of it. It's the total value of all products and services in a country. This means everything. Like every single product, every single service, every single thing, every grain of rice that is sold in this country, every slice of bread that is sold in this country gets counted into this number. But it's not just that. It is much more. It is such an important number that the way I want you to remember this, look, some economists will tell you this is an oversimplified way of looking at it. But for our purposes of this very introductory class, I want you to think of our nation's GDP, or gross domestic product, as our nation's yearly paycheck, okay? Now, what goes into the making of this paycheck? Well, let's talk about some of these things. Now, Y denotes essentially our national income, our GDP, okay? But what makes up this Y is C. We're going to call this consumer spending, and this makes up the bulk of GDP. Roughly about 70% of our GDP comes from this measure right here, and we're going to get into that in a second. Investment is another very important measurement that goes into this nation's paycheck, and we're going to talk about that. Government spending, of course, and then exports minus imports, and we'll get to that too. All right, let's talk about the C, though, because consumption is by far the most important measure when it comes to GDP. And by what do we mean by consumption? I mean the things that we buy, the things that we get sold, the things that you eat, the restaurants that you go to. Look, we can't be America. I've seen this so many times. Our politicians really need us to keep buying. The second we get scared as an electorate or, as a mass, our economy starts to fail. We are built to consume. Now, not every country is like this. Other countries have they have the same measures that make up their GDP, but in America, consumption is our most important. And that's often why you'll see some institutions and magazines, like there's this magazine called Adbusters, who I think is very interesting, you should look into. They are actively trying to make you more aware that consumption is essentially our biggest export. What we do best as a nation is consume. Can we go forever on this? I have some economist friends, that fear if consumption is our biggest export, it's the thing that we do the best. Can we be sustainable like this? Can we keep going forever like this, or will we reach a limit? But that's for another day. What we need to do is focus on what it is. Now, we're going to be building a flowchart of sorts. And this, since it is the biggest one, I want you to know how this is going to work. Essentially, everything on this list counts towards GDP. Personal consumption, the selling of consumer goods back and forth between firms and households, but also households give up their labor to these firms. That also counts in the consumption category of GDP. And of course, firms pay out wages, which also counts into GDP. Now, this has some problems, of course, and we're going to talk about that at the end. But what I want you to know for now is this circular flow model of consumption. And we're going to add to this as we go along, because the next category we need to talk about is investment. Now, this is a little bit different because what I am talking about here is we're not talking about stocks, okay? We're not talking about stocks and bonds, not that kind of investing. What we are talking about specifically in GDP is a firm investing in itself, essentially buying goods that help the production of finished goods. So it's when firms invest in itself to facilitate the making of more goods. Now, this could mean just like buying more products that build more things, or expanding your firm to build more and more gadgets, more widgets. All of this is, and we call this private investment, not public investment. We're not talking about things like stocks and bonds. We are talking about private investment, and I hope I've made that abundantly clear. Let's move on to the next one, which is a big one: government spending. Now, this is an interesting one because this fits right here, okay? Government agencies. Now, this is interesting. The way your book has government spending says that it gives directly to the firms, and 99% of the time, that is 100% true. However, recently, over the last, 6-7 years, you might have remembered COVID, where government actually gave money directly to households. Now, that happens very rarely, but it does happen. But most of the time, it's government agencies giving to firms. Now, what are they giving? Government in and of itself has no money. What money is it giving? It's giving away your money. Government's money is your money. It is the tax dollars that they collect and redistribute. Now, here's the problem. Our government might be spending more than it has most of the time. We call this national debt because what we have accumulated over I'm going to be honest with you, we haven't been even for a very long time. And sometimes that's okay. It's okay to be a little bit in debt. It's okay to invest in yourself as long as you're paying your debt down. The problem is our government has not exactly been paying itself down. This is slightly older. This is about a month old, but our U.S. national debt has just reached $39 trillion. And that means that if you look at all the people that pay taxes inside of America, that means that each taxpayer owes about $357,000. Now, I'm pretty sure you don't have that. I'm pretty sure I don't have that. And yet, here we are paying taxes. Now, if we were in this much debt, we would consider ourselves in trouble. Is our government in trouble? I don't know. I'm going to leave that to you. The last portion of this GDP model, this consumption model, this model of our nation's yearly paycheck is our net exports. And it's essentially this, okay? We look at what we export, the things get sent out, and we look at compared to what gets brought in. And what gets sent out is positive for us, what gets brought in is negative for us, and we look at where that balances out. Now, typically in this country, well, we'll get to it in a second, but it factors in like this. This is the import-exports. We don't typically get import-exports to households. It all works like this. So this is the consumption model, but I want to just point out one thing. We have been underwater in this net exports arena for quite some time. We have more people, again, like I said, what we do best is consumption. And so since we are the world's largest consumer, we get people sending us goods more than we have goods sent out of our country. Now, your president over the past year has said, wow, this is a big bubble. You know what we should do? We should capitalize on this. And we could make a profit by selling our consumption to the world. And he calls this a tariff. It's essentially a tax. If you want to use our consumers and sell your goods from outside of the United States, you have to pay a tax. And you can see here that President Trump has increased this tax, this tariff, this sometimes called a duty, from somewhere up to 2% to somewhere up to 10%. Now, while this will make our nation some money in terms of tax dollars, a lot of times these prices get passed on to you, the consumer. And I think if you look around your grocery store, if you look around your local Walmart, if you look around your local Target, I think you see these prices being reflected in this. So is it going to work? I don't know. I know there's a lot of people fighting back on this. So it's just something to think about when we talk about output and income in this model. Now, one last thing before we go today. I want to talk about some of the problems associated with GDP and this measurement. And the first one is leisure. Now, economists don't know, okay, look. I just want to point out, economists struggle with a lot of things. And look, there's a lot of graphs I can show you that, we know exactly what we're talking about here when it comes to leisure. But to put it in a basic point, we often think of more GDP as a good thing. We often think of making more money as a good thing. So higher GDP is what we're looking for because it, in our minds, is a good. We want more of it. We want to get our nation's paycheck bigger. The issue is when you get a bigger paycheck, you act more leisurely, which as a consumer, I want leisure. But economists see a trade-off between if you're being leisurely, if you are relaxing, you are spending less time working. And it is only work that causes our GDP to grow. And so this, in and of itself, is a conundrum that economics, there's plenty of graphs to show this trade-off. We have yet to figure out how to continually increase GDP and yet continually increase our leisure. And so, this is a graph of how much time do Americans spend doing various activities each year. Well, it looks like we spend most of our time sleeping. But the second most thing is working. Third most is relaxing. This is the trade-off that we make each and every day. How much time do I work? And how much time do I spend in leisure? Now, that's just one thing, and we could talk about that for days, but there are just a few more problems I'd like to bring up before, of course, we talked about leisure. Before we go today, another problem is bads. Now, bads rarely get talked about in economics, mostly because we talk about goods. Goods are great. When we see a good, we want more of a good. A bad is just the opposite. When we see a bad, we want less of it. Now, the classic bads example is often pollution. We want less pollution. But if we want a higher GDP, which means we might need more production, inevitably, we accrue more pollution, thus more bads. So, this is once again a trade-off that GDP hides. Also, GDP doesn't really account for black markets or secondary markets. Essentially, you think about the drug trade, or what about ticket sales, from right outside the venue, our GDP doesn't account for that, and should it be counted in that? Lastly, I want to just talk about briefly, these GDP numbers we get always seem so perfect, and they always seem so exact. But I'm pretty sure there's no way that we can get the exact number. Now, we say our government will tell you that we get very, very close to the exact number of our GDP. But then 6 months later, there'll be a revision. My point is, to a certain extent, we are just estimating this number. And if we are going to estimate, why wouldn't we fudge it just a little bit higher? Because our government and our classes and many more economics classes along the way in your education will tell you, oh yes, China is certainly lying about its GDP. Well, if China's lying, are we lying? Oh, no. Only they will lie about their GDP, not us. We are perfect. It's just a thought to put in your mind. Are the numbers that you see real, or are they just lies? Just a thought. Look, there's going to be an assignment on your Canvas. I want you to take a look at it. Next week, we're going to talk about aggregate demand and supply. Again, please read chapter 12. It's a great chapter. It goes a little more in depth into the little tiny parts of GDP that I really want you to know, and I bring up. We're getting closer and closer to our midterm, which is in 2 weeks away. But thank you for being a part of this class, and I will see you again next week.